What's up, everybody? Dear Jonhson here. Some know me as Rattletrap 1776. So going live today, January the 18th, which is my 10-year anniversary of recording my debut EP that featured my first Billboard hit. Real cool, kind of hot. So I think a lot of people need to go back to the origin, go back to where I came from, where this all started. Most of you weren't there for that, but that should show you why the good Lord has me right where I'm at today, at this present time, this moment in history. Because I know all the secrets of country music. I know how they're playing everybody, preying on your emotions. They use publicity. They use all the gaslighting terms, manipulation. So I had Billboard hits before I had #1 bestsellers showing you what's exactly going on in the world today. Now, I just go by comments in the comment boxes and also in inboxes. So this is not directly towards a lot of you who follow, who are great people, great patriots, your readers, your studiers, your people who apply this, but there's still a lot of people who comment in the comment boxes. And also in the inbox that proves you're not reading anything. You're not reading, you're not studying. Therefore, you can't seek to comprehend what you've been stewing on all these years. If you're over 40 years old, probably if you're over 50 would be the better, but we'll just use 40. If you're over 40 years old, your whole life you have been gaslit, manipulated by design, by the swamp, the cabal, 2016 and prior, career politicians. Now, not all those politicians were bad people, but they are few and far between. But there's a quote out there that says insanity is doing the same things over and over and over again and expecting different results. So a lot of you are driving your own self insane because you won't seek to change. Maybe you're not reading something. Maybe you're looking at the wrong thing. Maybe you're listening to the wrong people. Now, I'm not here to preach to you, as always. But if you are a Christian, you shouldn't be negative whatsoever. You should always be positive. That's what the whole Bible is based on, is faith in things unseen. You can't prove there's a God. You can't prove Jesus Christ walked on this earth. But you have a Bible that says so, and you believe in that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I believe in that. God tells you in His Word that you're going to be ostracized. You're going to be punished. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be mocked. You're going to be laughed at. God tells you this. But also in the Bible it tells you to have faith. That if you have the faith of a mustard seed, and I don't know if any of you have ever looked at a mustard seed, but a mustard seed is pretty small. That you can look at a mountain and tell that mountain to move if it's God's will. And that's where a lot of you get in trouble. You're wanting what you want, not God's will. That's where a lot of Christians get in trouble. You're already deciding what you want before God can even say a word to you. So if you're a Christian and you claim to be a President Trump supporter or a patriot, you should not be negative one bit. You shouldn't be a negative Nancy. You shouldn't be a David Downer. You should be the most positive person on the planet, period. Even when your back is against the wall and the enemy has surrounded you. And the reason why we have a Bible, but also the flippage of that as well, is to have parables out of it, examples out of it. And there's one great example in this very moment. Moses. Do you know all the people's name that were in the wilderness with Moses? No, you don't, do you? But you know Moses' name, don't you? Yeah, one person. So it don't matter that, more veterans aren't saying something. It don't matter that, more people. What matters is that you're here. And if you found someone like me, who all I do is outline everything lawfully that supports our foundation, supports our Constitution, supports our Declaration, supports our military, supports all of our founders' ideologies, you have no excuses after that. And if you follow someone in the comment box who says, oh, people are still only here buying this BS, and blah, it's your fault. You're letting someone else take you away because you're lazy, you're complacent, and you want to be spoon-fed everything. Now, I'll spoon-feed you the correct stuff, but majority of people who are complaining at this date and time, you're running and you're listening to everything that has a mouth and everything that has a blue check, expecting something to be different right now, and it's not going to be. This is a strategic operation. And when you seek to know what President Donald John Trump and the military is working with, that's all you need to know. That's people's problems. You're running to every other man and woman out there who has a website or a blue check or a red check or a this. If they do not directly represent or can prove that, like I could show my Department of War badge and all these other things, I can show that. I have full credentials to go anywhere with the military and anywhere with the press. Now, I'm a low man on the totem pole, but I happen to be a veteran as well. That's just a bonus. You don't have to be a veteran to know what's going on. You do not have to be a veteran to know what's going on whatsoever. That's just a bonus. But if people do not represent President Donald John Trump or anybody in the realm of what he's working with, you need to unfollow it, unsubscribe, and dump it. People wonder why I raise my voice like this. Is because this is so easy. It's so simple, it's stupid. Social media is good when it's good, but boy, when it's bad, it is ugly. Social media brought me to you. Great thing. Social media works when it works, but when people start following all the wrong people and all the people want to make money and want to have a face, want to be famous, or I said it first, or I did. Truth hurts sometimes. Facts hurt sometimes. But honesty comes out of that as well. I've been wrong in my life before. And every person that I've ever been wrong with that will remember maybe an incident or something years ago, or someone said, well, this is right here. And I said, I don't think so. And I went and looked it up. Every person that I've ever been wrong with, I have gone back and said, you know what, man, you were right. But if they're a good person, they won't hold that on you. What they will do is say, hey, you're even better and bigger of a man, or if you're a woman out there, they'll say, you're even better or bigger as a man for coming back and saying that, hey, I was wrong. So where we are right now in the world, we have a terminology problem and we have an education problem. Really, you could probably flip those around and say an education problem, because education will teach you the difference in terminologies, right? Libtards love them some pronouns, but they don't like the other terms out there. So if you want to be a part of what's going on, you want to contribute. And who knows where God will lead you in your lives. You never know. You don't know that. 9 people watched me live on August 24, 2022. 9 people. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 people. Now, I did get confirmation that the Department of then Defense, now War, helped that video go viral. But that's all right. People still had to watch it live while it was going on. But what 9 people did, though, those 9 people shared and they commented. And they got those algorithms rolling. And then some others helped with that. I don't know what God has planned for you, but I know that how He works. And He works individually. Now, we can be messengers of truth and messengers of faith and everything, but it's not telling you how to live. It's teaching you some things. My mom and dad taught me. My grandparents taught me. My great uncles taught me. And I listened to them. I shut up and listened. And they taught me things. I'll never forget one time, this was years ago, my grandfather, I'll never forget it. He told me, son, you better come over here and learn this. He was working in the yard. He was an expert with machinery, steel, iron, metal. Better come over here and learn this. Grandpa won't be here your whole life. He'd say, we'd drive past the cemetery. He'd look out at an oak tree. There was an oak tree. It's not there anymore. But there was an oak tree in the cemetery. He said, one day I'm going to be out there fertilizing that oak tree. I said, oh, Papa, don't talk like that. Oh, Papa. Son, death is part of life. But he also told me that one day you're going to drive by that cemetery. 5 years, you'll drive right by it. You won't even think about me out there. And I remember the first time I ever drove by the cemetery, and I didn't even think that my grandfather, who taught me how to play guitar, taught me how to write songs, taught me everything I know about life. He was a Native American, so life and Mother Nature, everything else. I drove by. I'll never forget the first time I drove by, and I just drove by, and it hit me what he said. And I drove by that cemetery, and I got down the highway, and I realized I just drove by what my grandfather told me. We are living, walking examples. Doesn't matter who God is, what God looks like, whatever it is, whatever you want to call them. If you want to come up with a new name for God, it doesn't matter. If you believe in your heart that somebody created this earth, we're here for a reason. We're here for a purpose. We all are stewards of this place, but that requires actions. You hear me all the time saying, you can lean on a shovel and pray for a hole, but the hole's not going to dig itself. That's not how God works. So all these liberals out there, they're on social media daily. All these rhino Republicans, and even Republicans who are probably good people, they're just sitting there typing all day and think they're contributing. They're not. If they're not exemplifying and or teaching you what President Donald John Trump is the face of, it's all a bunch of air. But especially the liberals. There's not a thing in the world they can do to stop what's taking place. And it's a revolution taking place right now. We're having our own revolution. It's not changing anything. It's not rewriting anything from the foundation, but it's flipping it back over as prescribed in the Declaration of Independence. That is one thing you never hear a rhino or a liberal talk about, is the Declaration of Independence, because that's how they get their butts kicked. That is your civil responsibilities. That is your civil duties. That is what outlines your civil role, civil duty, and civil responsibility. And a lot of you think that this right here is action. It's not. Now, it's great to share these posts. It's great to comment in them. But you got to share the right things. You got to share the right people. You got to unfollow. That's how social media works. The algorithms. It's all a coding system. When you follow the wrong people and you comment in the wrong comment boxes, it's still an algorithm there, and it shares and it makes it more visible to more people. So you're contributing to more people hearing what they don't need to hear and staying in the past, wallowing in the past. President Donald John Trump is the face of draining the swamp, which means draining the past. So why are you still feeding on it? Why are you still stewing on it? Why are you still wallowing in it? Why aren't you reflecting peace, prosperity? Hey, why aren't you reflecting a fighter, a warrior, a vocalist, a voice? Why aren't you being that? You don't need to be worried about cancel culture anymore. Don't worry about that anyway. Being different, but reflecting the foundation is what you're supposed to look like. When you're wallowing in the past and you're looking just like everything that we just came out of, how can you support the man that's the face of the polar opposite of that? That is a principle, and that is a double standard when you go against that principle. So if you're negative, if you're a Debbie Downer, if you're saying, nothing's going to change until we see justice, you're part of the problem, if not the problem. You all want justice, but you don't want to see how you're the problem who led us here. Everybody, every single person that don't know what I know and don't speak the way I speak and talk the way I talk and act the way I act, you're part of the problem. Because you allowed us to get here. You allowed the swamp to grow. You allowed the career politicians to take advantage of you. Because we, the people, are the government. So you allowed it. So you want to demand justice. You want to demand it because, you're free and you're protected right now to yell for your demands, but you didn't prevent how we got here. You allowed us to get here. And now you want to demand something when you don't even know what it would look like, and you also wouldn't even have a strategic plan to save people's lives and to capture the enemy at the same time, simultaneous, because you would go in and just lasso everybody up, hang them based off of your fuzzy feelings, and then what would happen? You wouldn't capture the whole enemy. You would only capture the names you know because you don't know how to follow the money. You don't have the skill sets to follow the money. You don't have the skill sets to get in and look like the enemy and infiltrate the enemy without being compromised. You have no knowledge of how to infiltrate and how to get in strategically. There are a lot of people who look bad who have been playing a role. And you've done damned them to hell because of your little bubble and what you're staying in. When if you will seek to understand and comprehend the operation, which are laws and orders, the laws and orders outline the operation. And the operation reflects and supports the laws and orders. However you want to look at it. If you would seek to comprehend that there is an operation taking place that have laws and orders that outline in a chronological order in a blueprint, then you would see the bigger picture. And you wouldn't be mad. You wouldn't be angry. You wouldn't be stressed or anxiety and frustrated and all this other stuff. You wouldn't even look at chaos the same way. You would look at Tim Walz and this, all of a sudden, this mayor who's rose to fame, all of a sudden, you would see it for what it is. It's part of the plan. It's part of the strategy. And you would flip your script. You would flip your attitude. Attitude is everything. Once you know the laws and the orders that outline the military government, military occupation, continuity of government, once you know that, you would look at everything completely different and the way you're supposed to. And you'd be sitting over here sipping on some coffee with a mug that says, they see me rolling, they hate me. Any kind of hate right now is ignorance. People who hate me, they're ignorant. They're either ignorant, morons, or stupid. Because all I talk about are laws and orders that outline our foundation. If you don't know the foundation, there's your problem. If you don't know the ideologies of our founders, there's your bigger problem. If you don't know the Declaration of Independence, there's your problem. If you don't know that the Constitution derived from that, it's a product of the war, a product of the fight, there's your problem. If you don't know where America was hijacked, there's your problem. If you don't know that this group of people through the years got in and took advantage of your ancestors, your families, yourself, there's your problem. Now, if you're one of those people who say God wins, you're also part of the problem. Saying God wins is easy. That's like becoming a fan of a team who just won the Super Bowl. Now, you may be someone that don't have a lot of family and friends, and we can't prove that you're not a fan of theirs. But most of the time we can, because you could say, when was your football team established? Ooh, you don't know. Who was your first coach? How many championships y'all have? How many title championships? Pretty easy to find out who is and who ain't, right? Terms matter. Education matters. Education. We have man-made institutions, colleges. Hey, I'm a product of it. University of Alabama graduate, Colorado State graduate. I have a bachelor's and a master's in business. I'm a product of it. I can speak for it. If you're young out there, you're going to college right now, here's your secret. Learn the professor. Learn the professor's mind. Learn how they think. Learn how they talk. You'll be a 4.0 student. I'm a product of it. I was a solid 2.8. C's get degrees, baby, at University of Alabama. But I was a solid 3.9 at Colorado State. Now, I have a photographic memory. And when I learned that was about my junior year at Alabama, when I would not study for a test. Didn't even know there was a test. Show up on test day. See everybody with their notes out. And I'm like, hey, what are y'all doing? Oh, we got a test today. A test? Give me your notes. And I could read, speed read, and can memorize what I just read and at least make a C. That's why this is so much fun, right? Because you live, you learn, right? We've all been young before, right? We've all, responsibilities, right? I was at the University of Alabama, away from home. Mom and Dad were 200 miles away. I'm there. College football was a king, right? You didn't know how to manage your time correctly, or you did. But see, most of the A students back then, right, where are they now? They ain't nowhere to be found. Because they don't have social experience to go with it either. So education in this nation is based on a man-made system. And a lot of you know this. A lot of you are parents. Your children come home and all of a sudden you don't know anything. Because you didn't go to college. Right? But you're paying for them to go to college. But they're coming home and telling you that you don't know what you're talking about, Mom. You don't know what you're talking about, Dad. Does that sound like an education? That's called a brainwashing. Right? All the man-made institution. That was by design as well. They didn't get everybody, but they got a lot. Then we have those education systems versus the government and the military. Now, I'm not a big proponent, obviously, of big government. Not whatsoever. We, the people, are the actual government. But because we have derived where we have institutions, organizations, gas stations, grocery stores, all kinds of stores. Our whole lives revolve around a little green stamp, a little piece of paper that patriots we know as what? Fiat currency. Everyone's lives revolve around that. And our nation built a system that we're so intertwined now with that if you went in there and ripped the rug out of that and all of a sudden just demolished it, 1929 would be rookie level compared to what it would look like if they went in there and just ripped the rug out. So a lot of you out there, not a lot of you patriots, but a lot of people that consider yourself a patriot, consider yourself a Republican, consider yourself a President Trump supporter, you just ripped the rug out. You wouldn't even think about all the other, because you want justice so bad, you go in and just whoop, and you talk about chaos and pandemonium. Then you would have a civil war. Then you would have all kinds of just bloodshed. That's why when something is like the boiling pot of water, when it's boiling, well, you either cut it down or you get you a little panhandle, pick it up, take it off real fast. You can do that to boiling water. Right? But there's some things you can't do that to. Some things you got to go in and go walk it back a little bit. You got to quell it. Can't kill it, you got to quell it. Some of you don't understand that. That's why you're yelling out there, and that's why you're restless right now, because you don't understand simplicities of operations and systems. And then you want to change. Oh, you all talk about love and peace and kindness and harmony, and you can't stand politicians on any side of the aisle, but you don't want to do anything about it. You didn't think that it would be a little bumpy? You didn't think that it wouldn't look a little bit like this? So many of you, though, you focus on what the enemy's shouting, not what God's whispering. Liberals, they're all about peace, love, kindness. Does it look like that? Does a mayor dropping FU, the F-bomb, and then turn around, drops the F-bomb, turns around a few sentences later, but we're going to show them love and kindness and peace. That is gaslighting, and that's manipulation at its finest. And until you understand what gaslighting is and manipulation, and have that skill set to know that that is a double standard that they live. It's a do as I say, not as I do. That's what that is. Do as I say, not as I do. You can't drop the F-bomb in one sentence and then turn around and say, well, we're going to show them peace, love, and kindness. Because his F-bomb was directly tied to President Trump, directly tied to the military, directly tied to ICE, who are law enforcement. They're enforcing the law. So therefore you need to know what? You need to know the law. There's no such thing as an unlawful order if it's in law. If it's in law, it was legislated through a bill that was passed as law. Every single law, listen people, every single law that President Trump is working with right now, law, not order, law, of the military was put into place. The most recent was 1995. How old were you in 1995? And what was your fashion style in 1995? So when you hear a libtard out there saying that President Trump is going against the laws, every law he's working with was legislated via the swamp. The rhinos, Republicans, and the Democrats. That's why it's so funny. Once you learn those simple things, then you will understand that rhetoric that they're spewing is either a do as I say, not as I do, gaslighting, manipulation, double standard. Real simple. Even though everyone on TV right now is central casting, they're either central casting or they're being exposed. So you got to know what President Trump's working with. So going back again, all of you out there wanting justice, you should first seek awareness. Because your awareness is your responsibility, your duties, your civil authority. That's your civil authority. You wouldn't be demanding right now justice if you'd have been a steward, as every single person should be. And then we can suppress evil. You can't eradicate it. The Bible tells us that. God's word shows that. You cannot eradicate evil. It's always going to be there. But you can suppress it. The way you suppress it is educating yourself on things that matter. Feeding on things that matter, that are wholesome, that are good for you. Good for your soul, good for your mind, good for your spirit, good for your attitude. That's how you do that. You got to change your attitude. And by changing your attitude, that means whatever you're consuming, you need to change it. If it makes you mad, angry, frustrated, bitter, stressed out, anxiety, frustrated, anything negative, you're not reading from the same word I am. The Word of God says specifically, I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So all these people out there that are on TV right now saying what they're saying, like Walls and this mayor and the representative Jason Crow, oh, I'm a combat veteran and blah, 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 blah. We're tired of foreign wars, all this. And then you have your others out there. They're in the limelight for a reason. They're being exposed. President Trump said follow the money way back in 2017. See, rhinos, Republicans, conservatives that don't know what you're supposed to know, you think 2017 was ages ago and separate from what's going on right now. It's not. It is an operation. 45-47 means you go back to the very first day that you heard of President Trump entering the arena to present day. You take that date and today's date and every date forward until there is absolute close of the laws and the orders that outline this dash. That is why so many people are struggling right now. You got to know your foundation. So I'm going to go over that really fast. Your foundation. Our founders started a war. Our founders started a war without anything on paper of what they were fighting for. April 19th, 1775, the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Paul Revere, one of the Midnight Riders, rode through town. The redcoats are coming, the British are coming, get ready. Our founders started a war without anything on paper of what they were fighting for. And they started a war based on one big quote and motto: taxation without representation. Today, we have taxation with representation, but we have Americans who can't even name the three branches of government. Oh, but you want to demand justice. And you don't even know how the very functions and operations of our nation works. Our founders started a war without anything on paper. Then, June 14th, 1775, the United States Army was established first. My blood branch. June 30th, 1775, 16 days afterwards, the United States military law was established. Military law came before the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. Military came first in this nation. There are people out there, big blue checks, that have actually went on worked with President Trump, whose people will tell you that the military was not established before the Constitution. Go figure. So see, a lot of you still follow this piece of trash. A lot of you. You still follow this dude as if his you-know-what don't stink. And President Trump has called him out to Pluto and back. And people still follow the trash because the trash does what? Still says President Trump's name. Has President Trump's name tied to him. And you wonder why you look the way you look. You won't even listen to the man who matters first. He's the face of the operation. He's the face of it. Not this other piece of trash who exposed themselves. You are a product of what you listen to. You're a product of what you feed yourself. What you feed your mind is what you're a product of. And that's why so many people look the way you look. And you deserve it in one way. Because I'm sitting up here on my time, my dime, because of my oath that I made personally to God, my nation, my state, my family, and myself last. So I'm going to continue to fight because I know what is and what ain't. Military law, June 30th, 1775. Can we do some Alabama hillbilly math again? Isn't June 30th, 1775 before July 4th, 1776? Isn't June 30th, 1775 before September the 17th, 1787? Do you know how dumb that is to have to even paint that as a scenario, as a question? Pretty sure, war articles established on June 30th, 1775 came before the Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776, and the Constitution, September the 17th, 1787. Those are the people that people are still listening to. Maybe some of these people, maybe they're hoarders. When you put trash in a trash can, do you even put it in a trash can? You just laid it around your house and hoarding? Your house smell like Rosie O'Donnell's feet? Is that what it is? Do you put trash in the trash bin and pull the trash bag out and that's your exercise for the day, but you leave the trash can inside in the trash bag? Is that what you're doing? I'm pretty sure the whole idea of putting trash in a trash can is to take the trash out. A lot of you are not taking trash out of your lives. That's your problem. But you can't identify trash. You think of it as, oh, well, one man's trash is another man's treasure. The Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were written in between the Constitution and then the Constitution being enacted, meaning putting it into action. It was written September the 17th, 1787, but it didn't go into action until March the 4th, 1789, which is our original inauguration day. So why does Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution that the libtards love to put in their mouth, why does Article 4, Section 4 say we, the United States, are a Republican form of government, a republic? Our main author, the main author of the whole Constitution and the whole Bill of Rights, James Madison, wrote in Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14 that democracies are dangerous. So if he wrote those before the Constitution and then turned in Article 4, Section 4 as the sole main author of the Constitution and wrote in Article 4, Section 4 that we are a republic, isn't the Constitution a product of his Federalist Papers where he wrote democracies are dangerous? where America got hijacked was before you, me, your mama, your daddy, your grandma, your grandpa, your greats. It's way back there. But before that, let's reflect a little bit. 1861. We all know what started then. But if you go to Abraham Lincoln's inauguration speech number 1, he specifically told how he was not going to touch the institution of slavery. A lot of people right now, you look atrocious, even in something as simple as the slavery topic. I hear Republicans say it was our party who freed you. The Republican Party of 1861 is not the same Republican Party of today. That's how atrocious you look. That's like saying the Los Angeles Dodgers won the World Series in 1955. No, they did not. The Brooklyn Dodgers did, not the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Los Angeles Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to LA in 1957. Do they get to claim it? Sure. But were they the same? No. Different organizations. They just carried the Dodger name. So, Americans are educated on what fits their little bubbles, fits their little fuzzy, fits what they want to fit in their mindset and what makes them feel good. That's not how truth works. That's not how facts work. 1861. 1862. This is very key for you veterans out there. My brothers and sisters in arms. Those of you who served but didn't know why you served. Those of you who joined for stability, money, dental, medical, college. You joined, but then you want to come home and act like a big hero when you didn't even want to be there in the first place. You probably want to know your foundation. You probably want to know your history. The terms foreign and domestic were added to the oath in 1862. Were we in Iraq in 1862? Were we in Somalia, Bosnia, Kosovo? Were we in Afghanistan in 1862? Do you think the Americans even knew where those places were? Some did. Some came here from there, but very few. 1862, foreign and domestic was added. It's called an ironclad oath. That's what they called it, the ironclad oath. Abraham Lincoln wanted you to take an ironclad oath, meaning he wanted it to be ironclad from this side and this side of why you're taking an oath and knowing your foundation and what you're fighting for. He was about the Union. That's why slavery, he left that up to the people. In his second inauguration speech, he scorched the people on both sides that it was a history lesson for both sides. He didn't trash one side like most people are doing. He said everyone can learn from this. But he let the people decide. He didn't let the federal government get involved in that. He let the people decide in that. That's why so many people, you look atrocious. There's no other word for it. Because you don't want to know a little bit of history. You ain't got to know everything. You don't have to know every war in the Revolutionary War. You don't have to know every battle. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know the key things, the summarization of it. We're not living in the past. We're taking from the past, learning from the past, and trying to make sure the future doesn't present another past someday that replicates that past. That's pretty simple. So his second inauguration speech, it simplified that. How Americans learned. But Abraham Lincoln was about the Union. Slavery was a topic between people. Was it right? I'm not sitting here making an argument for that. You can argue left, right, doesn't matter. It's between the people. The lesson here is not slavery. The lesson here is, how does the federal government operate? The Union as a whole. What liberals have done has infiltrated the federal government, and they went in there and they put all their perversions in there. And even though climate's not a perversion necessarily, it is in another manner, because they were getting all this money off of your back, taxpayer dollars, and they're funding all of their other trash with it. Follow the money. 1868, the birthright citizenship. Look what had just taken place in the United States of America, 1861 to 1865. 1868, the birthright citizenship. It does not have the same implications today as it did in 1868. And it also doesn't reflect the Constitution. See, what people don't realize is this. This is where people struggle the most. The Constitution, the original Constitution, as it sits, September the 17th, 1787, the drafting of it, meaning all your original Constitution, not the laws that have been passed under it, the original Constitution, it tells how the Congress is to write the laws, pass the laws. 1868 is a product of Congress passing a law. 1868 is a product of Congress writing, passing a law under the Constitution. It fit for that time period. It doesn't fit now. That's what President Trump's been talking about. I'm directly over the target because Instagram has frozen up again. They control this stuff. 1868 is a direct example of what worked then under the law doesn't work now under the law. And we the people can say, abolish it. That's exactly what President Trump is doing. That's what he's talking about. So see, people don't even understand how the Constitution works versus laws. The laws that are passed under the Constitution. 1871, Organic Act of 1871. They tore it up in 74, wrote another one in 78. That's when we borrowed money from British. The very nation just 100 years before that we fought against, we go borrow money from. And we got in debt. And it kept digging, and it kept digging, and it kept digging. And that's why you've heard President Trump say from the 1880s to the 1900s, and he specifically said the 1870s to 1913, specifically a few times. We had more money we knew what to do with. He's alluding to what Congress did, what those politicians did, when people stopped knowing what you're supposed to be knowing. That's brutal. That's brutal in a good way because it's truth. It's brutal in another way because it's truth. See how that works? Because the truth is showing you what you're supposed to know, but are you learning what you're supposed to know? Are you going to learn from it? Are you going to try to prevent it? Or are you just going to wait for another time in history and to demand justice because you didn't do anything in between? (1913) Income tax, Federal Reserve established. They put all that money from the 1870s, 1913, into their pot. 1929, stock market crash. 1933, That's when they changed the inauguration date from March the 4th to January the 20th. One. It's also Executive Order 6102, where Roosevelt issued, and it was an executive order, but if you didn't comply to it, fines, prison, or money. $10,000 fine. Where they bought back gold from people at $20 an ounce, which today's inflation is $499 an ounce. 1933 to 1938, Roosevelt and his New Deals. The New Deals, 1933 to 38. All these New Deals, it established the FDIC, the SEC, all kinds of things. President Trump, Executive Order 13959, freezing of the assets. When he talks about the pause, we're going through the pause right now. Public alert, unregistered soliciting entities. That's an SEC term. Pausing, freezing money. Follow the money. They followed the money. It's just now hitting the news right now. AP News the other day talking about the centralized banks being indicted. It's just now happening. We've been knowing about this for years now. If you know what you're supposed to know. 1941, 1942, the War Powers Act. President Trump just the other day alluded to how the War Powers Resolution Act is unconstitutional. I agree. The original Constitution says that the Congress is to declare the war, but the President is the what? Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy. So it's a joint, what? Command. A joint declaration. And then we the people do what? We the people vote both of them in. We vote in Congress and we vote in the president. So when we the people say we want the president to make that decision, 1951, and watch this string of ones. 1951, 61, 71, 91, 2001. Now you can go back and find some other stuff, but these are very big. These are very key in this chronological we're talking about. 1951. Congress of 1951 put term limits on the president. Nowhere in Article 2, Clause 1, Section 1 of the United States Constitution does it say that the Congress is to put term limits on the president. James Madison, the sole author of that Constitution, and Alexander Hamilton, one of the authors of the Federalist Papers, of the three, Madison, Hamilton, and John Jay, Hamilton and Madison said that a president should serve as a king as many times as we want to vote him in. So see, if you're seeking to comprehend someone's writing or something that you believe in, but if it's in a writing form and it's something you believe in, shouldn't you want to know the one who wrote it? Isn't that common sense? Sounds like it to me, right? To Kill a Mockingbird, one of my hometowns, Monroeville, Alabama. To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. She was asked one time why she didn't write another book. She's like, I said what I needed to say. To Kill a Mockingbird. Very powerful book. Very powerful illustration. But it was based on a true story. Her father was an attorney. Her father represented a black man who was wrongfully accused, just like the book depicts and the movie showed. She said, I said all I needed to say. I said what what she was passionate about, what she was strong about. She didn't have to write another book, but shouldn't you want to seek to know the author of the book? And then when you find out, wow, she didn't write another book because that was based on the true story, then the book is even more powerful because the book is the only book she wrote. And for those who don't know, Go Set a Watchman was the original dialogue of To Kill a Mockingbird. But if you never read it, or if you've never read To Kill a Mockingbird, it'll kind of mess that up. But Go Set a Watchman, for those who have read To Kill a Mockingbird, first off, read it first. But Go Set a Watchman is not a second book. That was the original monologue of To Kill a Mockingbird. But the publisher at the time said, hey, this is just a monologue. It's not really a book. Try again. So, correction, just in case you want to be a smart aleck. Some people out there will say, she wrote a second book. It's not a second book. You'll go read it. But if you go if you've never read To Kill a Mockingbird, read it first, because Go Set a Watchman, the characters in To Kill a Mockingbird die in Go Set a Watchman. Same characters. So some of them die. So that's why if you read it and actually know it was written first, it was actually written first. It was. To Kill a Mockingbird was second. How are these people over here dead, but in the second alive? Boom. There you go. History lesson for you. In a history lesson. 51. Congress violated it. You should probably seek to know James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay. Madison, Marburg versus Madison. Landmark and landslide Supreme Court case. The founder, the father of the Constitution, the sole author, having to go into the Supreme Court of what they established. He established that, the three branches of government. Having to go into one of the branches of his creation and explain what a law looked like just 14 years afterwards. No wonder we look stupid right now. The father of the Constitution, the sole author, having to go into one of these three branches, the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, and tell what a law looked like in 1803, 14 years after it went into action, 16 years after he wrote it, and tell what a law is supposed to look like, which specifically the ruling of it says a law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. So in layman's terms, that means if a law doesn't support the Constitution, it's not a law. Shouldn't be in law. 1951. 1961, President Eisenhower. 5-star general. Rare 5-star general. Never saw combat. Woo, boy. That stings, don't it, veterans? All of you bragging out there about your combat. Oh, you brag about combat, but then you turn around and say a lot of other things that contradict it. Like this new representative, this old Jason Crow out there. I'm going to get to him in a minute. 1961, President Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech. He didn't like where military and medical were going because of money. 1971, the Nixon shot. We'll back up a little bit. 1968, we left the gold standard. Unified Budget Act. Money. Follow the money. 71, the Nixon shock. That's when Congress made a dollar as valuable as they wanted it, or invaluable. You know what we call that? Inflation and deflation. Congress did that. Now go back again. Remember Executive Order 6102, 1933, buying people's gold back, but told them if they didn't sell it back, they'd be put in prison. 1991, September the 11th. Woo, don't that date ring a bell in history for something? That's 2001 though, isn't it? Yeah. But September the 11th, 1991, Daddy Bush was standing there and he said what? A new world order. We were going into a new world order. Ooh. 10 years to the day? 10 exact years to the day. September the 11th. But people don't want to talk about September the 10th, 2001. When Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld gets on TV and tells the whole world how $2.3 trillion was missing from the Pentagon. So, How did these hijackers know to hit the World Trade Center, but also the Pentagon? And I don't laugh for the innocent victims who died that day. 2011. See the ones? 2011. Gaddafi. Bin Laden. Gaddafi stood and told in 2009, he was at a speech, all these world leaders in there, and they were laughing at him. Assad was one of them. Didn't Assad flee Syria? He's a coward, first off. When you flee, you're a coward. Those of you who know anything about sailing and boats, the captain goes down with a ship if all his people don't get off first. Pretty sure when your leader flees, that makes you a puss and a coward, a sissy, a traitor. Therefore, if he ever resurfaced, which he won't in this world, but if that would have been the past, if they resurface and they're all of a sudden talking big and bad, you fled your nation, you left your people. And even if they were evil, fleeing still shows they're coward. They weren't willing to stand there and take the punishment of what they lied about, gaslit, manipulated, etc. Do as I say, not as I do. 2011, Gaddafi was quote-unquote assassinated. But in 2009, at this very speech in front of those leaders, including Assad that laughed at him, he specifically said, are we not going to investigate what happened to Saddam Hussein? Saddam Hussein was the Americans' friend, the United States. The past, not President Trump, not the dash, not 45-47, which is a bracket, everything before 2016. Are we not going to investigate what happened to Saddam Hussein? He was Dick Cheney's friend until they turned on him and they hung him. Who's been a product of the news in the last few years? Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney. All these people that you're crowing about and stewing about and looking all like, what's his name from Police Academy? That dude. Gold, whatever his name was. See, if you just know a little bit and forget about everything else, then you'd have it. You'd have it whipped, as the saying is. Bin Laden was a direct takeout of Obama. He's bragged about it. We know this for fact. Bin Laden was taken out by Obama. But where was he? He was in Pakistan. That was in May 2011. Gaddafi was quote-unquote assassinated in October 2011. Well, how does all this tie in? Libya, Benghazi. Who was the leader of Libya? Gaddafi. Hillary Rodham Clinton. What does it matter? They're gone. Remember Benghazi and our people? Our military especially? Benghazi. Who was Obama's Secretary of State? Hillary. The only way President Trump pulled this off, one, he's the face of the operation. He should get praise and respect that he deserves for the face of it, but he's the face of it. The only way this was made possible was the United States military generals and admirals, leaders and world leaders. The capitulations of 2017 to 2021 firmly shows you. And here's the other one. So 51, 61, 71, 91, 2001, 2011. What happened in 2021? What happened on January the 20th, 2021? What have I shown you? The 3 cannons at Arlington that they displayed for quote-unquote Joe as a 21-gun salute. That is not a 21-gun salute. The 3 cannons at Arlington is a funeral. That more than shows you, beep. No, we're in something different. We're in something revolutionary. We're in something biblical. We're in something historical. We're in something monumental. Those are straight up Army regulations. Everything that was displayed that day that actually wasn't displayed, there's always a commissioned officer at every cannon salute. There wasn't a commissioned officer there. That's Army Regulation 600-25. When quote-unquote Joe went to take the oath, after they quote-unquote did the oath, dun, 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 on the 4th one of those, that's called flourishes and ruffles. On the 4th one, Hail to the Chief is supposed to start playing, and simultaneously the 21-gun salute. Hail to the Chief started playing, but the 21-gun salute did not take place. That's Army Regulation 600-25. So how come Jimmy Carter, Clinton, how come all those you can look on YouTube and you can hear and see the cannons? How come quote-unquote Obama got them? Even for his traitorous, you know what? He got it. And we know for fact he's a traitor. We know for fact what he's tied to. We know for fact all the things, because he's not where? In the War Powers Resolution Act. No entry whatsoever. So the money shows everything. That's why so many people, you'd rip the rug out. You'd rip the rug out and then there'd be chaos and pandemonium versus, hey, we got a strategy. American people, they're already confused. They're already brainwashed. They're already this. The ones we can save intellectually, we can save them as we go. They'll figure it out. They'll figure this out because some will read, some will study. The rest, they're not going to fight for it. They're not going to get out in the streets. There's a few. There's a few who will. They'll get out there and they'll look atrocious like these people in, protesting ICE. You got to hand it something to them. They did get out and quote-unquote fight for it, but they don't even realize that what they're doing. But a lot of them are paid. We already know that. But the few who aren't paid and professional agitators by the deep state, all right, even though this is an operation, they're still making some of this look that way to keep things going as they clean out. And then the re-education. Everything has a process. Everything has a step. To reset the Declaration, reset our foundation. Not reset history, because we can't do that. We can't rewrite history, can't change it. But we can reset the foundation, and we can reset through a revolution for the future's sake. That way the future's past won't replicate the past. There's your rattle trapology right there. Boom, write that down. Money, follow the money. President Trump started that in 2017. Follow the money. Now flip that around though. What you're watching is the exposure of that. Every entity is key. Walls, Somalians, this mayor that's all of a sudden rose up. We're going to get to that in a minute, what they're tied to. Look at Captain Mark Kelly, right? Also in Congress though. So there's a joint right there. Oh, was in military, but now in Congress. All right, well, you can't use your military status when you're in Congress. All right, because when you're retired military, as I am, I still fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Therefore, anything I say can be held against me. Doesn't that sound familiar? Funny how that works. What they're doing is exposing the rings. Everything's unraveling. So you don't need to be reacting to the unravel part unless you're being positive about it. Unless you're going, holy crap, there's the other pieces. That's what you should be doing. When you see walls and this mayor and this representative and this Mark Kelly, you'd be like, oh, guilty, guilty, guilty. They're tied to the money. Tim Kaine, another one of those, tied to Venezuela. Anytime you hear any kind of retaliation rhetoric, you should be like, oh, tied to the money, tied to the money. That's what your attitude should reflect. President Trump is ending executive orders from the swamp. Venezuela, Yemen, Congo, even Ukraine. They're all executive orders with national emergencies all the way back to Jimmy Carter's EO 12170 from 1979. November this year would make 47 years how old that executive order is with a national emergency. Is that an emergency anymore? But see how those sanctions didn't do anything? Obama's archives, they're supposedly building the library for Obama right now. Why? Is it going to outline how he said Iran was a great deal? Did you see my recent post on that? I've done this before, but 3.67, 3.67, 3%, 3.6% was what the enrichment was supposed to be under Obama's great deal with Iran. It was at 60% on a minimum. There was to be no enrichment whatsoever. Zero, nada, zilch enrichment in Fort Howe. Well, it had 60% at it. 90% of the 60 was there. And that's a crazy percentage there for you, but still, some of them didn't have the full 60, but they were at 60%. Is 3.67, I mean, is it that hard of math? We're talking about 57% difference to the positive, meaning positive, not positive attitude, but positive meaning closer to a nuclear bomb. In Obama's archives, in his speech from August the 5th, 2015, talks about how the next 15 years, pretty sure 15 added to 15 is 2030. So last year, 2025, when we bombed the heck out of Iran's nuclear facilities, the IAEA that Obama also quoted, the same organization that said, oh, we're going to be down here at 3.67. Obama said that. But the IAEA last year said at 60%, and liberals going to call them liars and President Trump a liar? The same people that Obama quoted? I'm pretty sure if Obama and the swamp were all tied together, wouldn't the IAEA, wouldn't they be tied in? No, they know how dangerous nuclear weapons are, and they tell them the truth. Oh, they're at 60%. Obama's the one who said we're going to have them at 3.67 and they're a great deal, and blah, blah, blah. Go read the speech. Boy, see why sanctions don't matter if you don't enforce the law? Venezuela, same thing. Obama, executive order, sanctions. What were they doing? But look at the nations who didn't capitulate. Yemen, Venezuela, Ukraine, Iran. President Trump just signed an executive order this past week ending defense contracts. Another promise made, another promise kept. Said he's going to end defense contracts because defense contracts, contractors, and lobbyists only do what? They make excuses to keep us in foreign wars. Lobbyists, defense contractors. President Trump's abolished those. His recent executive order outlines this. Now, let's go to what did Representative Jason Crow, who is a traitor, piece of trash, what we call a dirtbag. I'm not going to say the word today. I'm going to refrain from it. But apply the word bag together. That is what Jason Crow is. All right, so let me show you how liberal hypocrisy works and double standards. So this representative says, I'm a 3-time combat veteran. And we're tired of foreign wars for oil. That's a double standard. All right, if you're going to brag about being a 3-time combat veteran, turn around and say that President Trump is a draft dodger, and then turn around and say that we don't want oil, well, wars, foreign wars for more oil, and say that President Trump is going against his word, that's a double standard. That's hypocrisy. One, your combat veteran status has nothing to do with anything. Being a combat veteran does not make you intelligent. It doesn't make you know the laws. It doesn't make you know the orders. It doesn't make you know your foundation, your history, none of that. That's why veterans out there, you need to drop that. That has nothing to do with it. Kudos to you and your resume and what you did. But you did that for God, or if you don't believe in God, there's another problem. But if you don't believe in God, you did it for your nation, you did it for your state, you did it for your family, and you did it for yourself. Your veteran status has nothing to do with putting down or belittling someone else for what they didn't do in service. We're either a volunteer service or we're not. If you're gonna what are you gonna call it, dog or trash people for being a draft dodger? We're either a volunteer service or we're not. Most of the people that we serve with, a lot of them didn't want to be there in the first place because they joined for money, stability, benefits, medical, dental, college. They were doing it for the benefits. They weren't doing it because they love the foundation, know our history, love our history. Weren't doing it for that. Huge difference. We're either a volunteer service or we're not. I don't blame a draft dodger from this angle. Well, they didn't want to be there. We shouldn't want them there. They don't want to be in service doing what they're supposed to be doing. We shouldn't want them there. The service is volunteer for a reason. It's volunteer because people who volunteer, they're supposed to want to be there for the right reasons, but a lot of them aren't. But trashing President Trump for being a draft dodger, which you have no real proof of, just hearsay and what the quote-unquote internet says. But I'm here to say, even if he was, it's a volunteer service. Therefore, because it's volunteer, people who don't want to be there shouldn't be forced to be there. Then turn around saying you're a 3-time combat veteran. So 3 times was the magic number? Why not 2? Why not 1? What about guys who did 10, 12, 13 tours? What if they say you're a piece of trash? Well, does that outrule your number 3? When do you draw the line there? Why are you bragging about being a combat veteran? Again, combat doesn't make you intelligent. It doesn't make you know the laws. It doesn't make you know the orders. It's not like it's an automatic download because, the greatest general we've ever known in this nation, one of them, Eisenhower, never saw combat. 5-star general. Rare 5-star general. He was known for strategy. If we have to go to war, then the war should be justified via the means of what's taking place. But this person, this representative Jason Kirk, he's actually exposing himself and the links to what everybody else has been saying. You, the patriot, you've been saying that. Hey, we don't want foreign wars for oil. This alludes to what President Trump said specifically. Not long ago, he said, why didn't we take the oil when we were in Iraq? Woo! Why didn't we, America, the United States of America, take the oil? Who was the president? Bush. So if we took the oil, but America didn't take it, the United States didn't take it, who took the oil? Oh, Bush. Who was his vice president again? Dick Cheney. See, that's why you shouldn't get mad, frustrated, angry, bitter, react. You should respond positively if you know what you're supposed to know, because these people are exposing the deep state. They're exposing it. President Trump's not telling on them. President Trump's not getting out there saying it's this person specifically. They're making them tell on themselves. Because if you're confident in what you're supposed to be confident in, you'll know that this is all part of the 45-47. We're still in that operation. These people are hanging themselves. They're telling on themselves. And when you know what you're supposed to know, when everybody knows what they're supposed to know, they're telling on themselves. And it's leading to that justice. But for the ones who don't know that yet, it's on record. It has to be on record. And it would much better be on record of them telling on themselves than the good guy ratting them out. See, there's some integrity in that, and you got to learn that. This is all strategy. They've been funneled to where they got to tell on themselves. They're hitting a wall. Isn't President Trump known for walls? They're hitting a wall, and they're hitting this wall, and they can't run anywhere. Their rhetoric's it's gone. But what looks like rhetoric to you isn't rhetoric. They're telling on themselves. And here's how they also tie in. So this Jason dude, a 3-time combat veteran, right? Military-industrial complex, right there, bragging about combat, turn around saying we don't need to be in wars. No crap, Sherlock. If you thought this was real time, that should be your thought process, your actual process. No, we shouldn't be there for that. So see, he just told on the whole ring, and when that's the bait, the liberals thinking that, say, oh, and they're focusing on the President Trump portion, draft dodger and this, that, and other. They're taking the bait. When the switch comes, and it shows all the tie-ins to the $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon, September the 10th, 2001, when it shows all the tie-ins in history, Obama and who all ties in, when Obama's name is not found in the War Powers Resolution Act, etc., 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 that switch is going to take place. You don't want to be in the switch as the recipient of the switch in the negative. You want to know what you can know before that. You can know this. So when you hear rhetoric like that, that's retaliation, and that's what you want, because they're telling on themselves. They're exposing themselves. They're tying in themselves to the money. President Trump followed the money. If President Trump was a part of all this, he wouldn't be ending defense contracts. He wouldn't be ending lobbyists. He wouldn't be ending executive orders. He wouldn't be bombing the very things that links them together. Now watch this. Mark Kelly is easy. He's easy to pick apart. Retired military. All right, he knows what the law says. The real Mark Kelly did. We're not talking about the play out and how they're playing this out, but the real Mark Kelly knows that. All right, he was tied into the money. Just because you're in the military and just because you're high ranking, that's even more access to be compromised, because you're high ranking, and when you didn't, you weren't on the good side of humanity, and you didn't know the good guys were in here infiltrating real good guys, they thought they were invincible, these people. There's a lot of generals connected to this too. Not all of them, but there's a lot. Generals, admirals, etc. All right? Just because they're a general and admiral don't mean that they're invincible either. Invincible from compromise as well. Mark Kelly's easy to pick apart because the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the law reads as it reads. If it's against the law, it shouldn't be in law. All right? Abraham Lincoln, you've heard me quote it, Abraham Lincoln specifically said, a bad law should be double enforced, strictly enforced. It should have never been in law in the first place. How did it get in law? That's you, the people. That's we, the people. That is your civic role, civic duty, civic responsibility to know how laws are passed, bills, legislation, Congress. That's why you also, I'm about to burn some toes up here. So many of you, you just know the federal level. You don't even know your state representatives. You don't even know your local state representatives. You don't read and study them. You ask your friends, hey, who are you voting for? You ask your friend who knows, hey, who are you voting for? Probably need to do your own research. Study, read. Know the law, know everything. The law applies from every level, top to bottom. But so many people don't even know your delegates. Woo! Boy, your toes should be burning right now. So, all these people, Walls, he specifically quoted, you got what you want, President Trump. Now leave my people alone. That quote is tying Walls in because, one, he lied about his rank. He lied about retirement rank. You don't achieve sergeant major and retire as a master sergeant. See, there's a terminology again, and Google shows this. Google says he achieved sergeant major, but retire. You don't achieve that. You can act as a sergeant major. You can act as a step above if they need a step above, but you don't serve as that. Huge difference in acting and serving. He blatantly, bald-faced lied about his retirement rank. It's all over ads, commercials, campaigns, speeches, people introducing him. He blatantly lied about being a command sergeant major. It's already big enough to be a sergeant major. It's even bigger to be a command sergeant major. And then master sergeant. You don't achieve and then retire. Let me show you another way. I didn't do this on the video the other day, and I wish I would have because it added just another element to it. Okay, if you made it to sergeant major in the Army, this is all Army talk, but this is what he was in, this is what I was in. If you made it to E9, sergeant major, if you went to the courses and you got pinned and everything back, you made it, right? You're tabbed as a sergeant major, E9, in pay grade, via the United States military, boom, and you retire as a master sergeant. Every veteran knows exactly what I'm about to say, how you would have to get that. You'd be demoted. Means you did something that got demoted. You lost rank because of something you did on your record. He didn't get demoted. He only made it to master sergeant, which means to make it to a sergeant major, he had to rank to that. Pay grade and rank would have to make it to that. That's not achieving it. When you're acting as that, like he did, however long it was, it doesn't matter, but he was acting as a sergeant major because the role couldn't be filled. So the master sergeant bumped up to the sergeant major, but he acted as it. He didn't serve as it. Serving means you made it to that rank, pay grade. He is blatantly lied. So Tim Walz is already, that's bad enough. If that was any Republican, especially as big as we are with military, hell would have no fury if a Republican did that. Liberals would turn this world over, every stone, everything, for something like that. But they have no foundation. They have no principle. They have no discipline, no structure. They're just, you don't want to be that. So watch how it ties in even more. So Tim Walz, there's that. Somali, the money, billions of dollars leaving the state of Minnesota alone to Somalia. Then the mayor, the F-bomb mayor, peace, love, and kindness, peace, love, and kindness. Go look up his gay pride. That dude has no testosterone whatsoever. We know who wears the pants in his marriage. All right, straight out of that. Then get down to him and his wife. Go look his wife up, the one who wears the pants. Guess what she's connected to? Law firm, for one. Two, guess what she was? A lobbyist. Ha 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 ha. Boom! It all ties in if you know what you're supposed to know. That's why anyone who is sounding off, mad, angry, frustrated, bitter, all the other things, negative, if you're any of those, it's because you don't know what you're supposed to know. You don't know the man that you claim to support. Know that. That's all you need to know. Now go to the do as I say, not as I do. Obama had a kill list. The disposition matrix. Kill list. Gaddafi, Bin Laden on his record. Now go to Supreme Court docket 23-939. The question posed there, can a president order SEAL Team 6 to commit assassination of a political leader? Woo! The last time a president and SEAL Team 6 were involved in any operation revolving around a death of a political leader was Obama and Osama bin Laden. In there, the Amici Curiae, which are friends of the court, it's Latin for friends of the court. One of those being General Keith Kellogg. Who did President Trump point at in North Carolina last year? What did he say? I'd like to recognize someone who's been with me before all of this. General Keith Kellogg. One of those is General Keith Kellogg. Says an astounding no. And it goes on in the bottom, says any military officer who carried out such order committed the gravest of crimes, murder. You hear liberals out there, oh, President Trump, he needs a congressional authorization, He can't use the military without congressional authorization. Congress is supposed to do this. They did. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. You hear me say it weekly. It's in every post. It's in every video. There's your congressional authorization. A Democratic-controlled House, December the 20th, 2019, passed this section in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. Guess who was Speaker of the House? Nancy Pelosi. That's why it's humorous to people like me to see people in chaos, mad, angry, bitter, frustrated. Not humorous from the side of, oh, look at these people. Humorous for the fact that you're wallowing in stuff you don't even have to wallow in. And if you keep wallowing in it, and if you're the same people, then you're doing it to yourself. You don't have to. You got to change your way of thinking. And it's not just thinking. You have to re-educate yourself on what you thought you were educated on. You weren't. You were brainwashed on things that don't matter. Things that are not applicable. You can't apply trash to your life when the trash is not good for you. You've got to apply what matters. And the whole world can be shouting the polar opposite. Doesn't matter. It's who's in charge and what are they doing. And right now, there is not a single thing that President Donald John Trump, his face, has not been a part of that does not support the original foundation, the ideologies of our founders, the military, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. Not one single thing. But he has an entry in the War Powers Resolution Act. Osama, your mama, Obama, does not. And Osama, your mama, Obama, because he don't have an entry in the War Powers Resolution Act, he has Bin Laden as a bragging point, and Gaddafi as a tie-in with Libya, Benghazi, and his Secretary of State, Hillary Rodham Clinton, on record. And Gaddafi tying in the United States to Dick Cheney, which ties you into Bush, which ties you into the oil, which ties you into the money of the deep state, the swamp. Not President Donald John Trump. President Donald John Trump is ending the wars through strategic strikes, strategic operations. Quote-unquote Joe continued 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that are deporting the migrants, taking back the Panama Canal, ending election interference, enforced Doge, froze the people's assets that were funding the Chinese Communist military. Man, Bezos capitulated to President Trump. Zuckerberg's capitulated to President Trump. Bill Gates has capitulated to President Trump. Tim Cook of Apple has capitulated. They all have donated to President Trump. They're not part of the swamp. They were. But they must have had things on their record that wasn't what? Crimes against humanity. Or maybe they do, and they twist this in a different way, but they all capitulated. And anyone who says that, oh, he's wallowing in it, you're a fool. You're a fool. And it's because you don't read, it's because you don't study, and it's because you're not seeking to change your past. You're not seeking to change that insanity point. Because President Trump has a congressional authorization. Obama does not. And President Trump's told you, all roads lead to Obama. And if you'll read the Law of War Manual, in there, which is pretty long, not going to lie, and it don't read like, it's kind of like the Bible. You can't read it in a chronological order. It applies in many different ways. But in the Law of War Manual, it talks about relevancy. How you, a lot of you, if it were up to a lot of people, you'd damn everybody you could for millions of years back if you could prove it. Can't do that. You have to catch it in the act. You have to punish people in the act, in the moment. Meaning, like, you have to have relevancy. And that's why so many people are looking atrocious, because you're trying to go back to 1963 and Israel and all these other things you can't even prove. It's just stuff you're reading on .orgs and .coms and .nets and relevancy. What we're working with right now is all that matters. We can learn from the past of what we know from the past. What is factual from the past. Not what fits your little fuzzy, feel-good spot right here. Because everybody has a different fuzzy, feel-good spot. So you got to go to what matters. What outlines a future. Where that future can look back and have a past that don't look like the past that we just came out of. That's what matters. And until you put all that other crap aside and realize where the line was drawn in the sand, June the 16th, 2015, November the 8th, 2016, January the 20th, 2017, until you see that line that was drawn in the sand, and that how 45-47 is a strategic plan, strategic operation that outlines a military government, military occupation, military operation, continuity government, government exile, puppet government, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, hybrid warfare, asymmetrical warfare, guerrilla warfare. Until you know all that. So that's why you got to study that. And I don't want to say that's why I'm important, but that is what I'm put here for, is to show you that. And until you know that, all this other stuff out there, blue check this, red check that, but it's just a bunch of noise. It's drama, it's propaganda. It doesn't provide anything wholesome to you. It doesn't feed your soul. It feeds your mind a bunch of trash. It doesn't feed your soul manna. And that's a very key thing that is separating so many people right now from what you want to call truth and facts versus drama, propaganda, the past, which is the swamp. Why did you yell, drain that swamp, if you don't want the swamp drained?